that Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas will visit the U.S.-Mexico border in El Paso, Texas, this week. This would be just days before former President Donald Trump and Republican lawmakers are planning to visit the border. It has been 91 days since President Biden named Harris as the administration's border czar. Republicans have heavily criticized her for not visiting the border since then, though she has made other trips to places like Guatemala. Was her hand forced here, Senator? She had to get there before former President Trump?
Well, of course it was. I mean, 91 days ago, she was named as border czar, in charge of the border crisis, and she demonstrated strong leadership by doing not a damn thing, by going nowhere near the border, by doing everything she could to hide from the crisis. Now, frankly, that's the same thing Joe Biden is doing. She's emulating the president in hiding from the crisis, and so suddenly President Trump is going to the border and they realized, oh crap, we got to do something. But I got to say, even this announcement, so she announces that they're going to El Paso. El Paso is a lovely city. It is a beautiful place in Texas. It is not also, it also doesn't happen to be the locus of the crisis.
No, that's
you
the Rio
look
Grande
at where
Valley.
the Rio Grande Valley is, and for folks who aren't from Texas, let me give you a sense. So El Paso is on the western tip of Texas. The Rio Grande Valley is almost on the southern tip of Texas. It's 800 miles away. To give you a sense of just how far they are, Chicago, Illinois is closer to Washington, D.C. than El Paso is to McAllen. And so she's going where the height of the problem isn't. Let me tell you what Kamala needs to do. Kamala, you need to go to the Rio Grande Valley. Kamala, you need to go to McAllen. Kamala, you need to go to the Donna tent facility, which is the tent city your administration has built that is massively over capacity, that has kids in cages. You need to look at the children in cages that you and Joe Biden put there in a way that is endangering their safety, is subjecting them to abuse and sexual assault. And there's a reason, John, she's not going to McAllen, not going to the Rio Grande Valley, because she doesn't want the cameras to see the Joe Biden cages with kids in cages.
I mean, there are a lot of people who say that she didn't want to go to the border and have that photograph or that video to be replayed again and again and again. But I mean, just in all fairness, the El Paso sector is where the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and a lot of Republicans went. They also went to the Arizona, the New Mexico sectors as well. So Republicans have been there too, to that area of Texas.
Oh, sure. And listen, I've been to El Paso many, many times. El Paso is a wonderful, thriving border community. It's a very important community. And there are certainly real problems with illegal immigration in El Paso. But there's a reason she doesn't want the TV cameras to show hundreds upon hundreds and thousands upon thousands of children lying side by side by side. You remember a couple of months ago when I took 19 senators down to the border, and we went to that Donna tent facility. That tent facility was built to hold 1,000 people. With COVID restrictions, its capacity was 250. The day we were there were over 4,200 people packed in that facility with a 10% COVID positivity rate. Kamala Harris needs to look in the eyes of the children who are suffering because of Joe Biden's failed immigration policies. And when she looks in the eyes and realizes this isn't working, that's when they need to end catch and release, and they need to reinstate the Remain in Mexico international agreement that had solved this problem until Joe Biden and Kamala Harris screwed it up. She doesn't have any solutions. You ought to pause and ask. I mean, she's gotten a lot of grief over 91 days for not going to the border. Any rational person would say, well, gosh, if you're named in charge of the border, Jillian, tomorrow, if the president called and said Jillian is in charge of the border and the crisis there, I'm willing to bet within, what, 24, 48, maybe 72 hours, you'd get on a plane and fly down to the border. You'd say, all right, if I'm in charge of this thing, let me see what's going on.
President Biden has shown a total lack of accountability when it comes to addressing the border crisis. That's why I announced last month that I would be holding all of President Biden's nominees for the Department of Homeland Security from being approved through our expedited process until he and Vice President Harris visit the border, and they see for themselves the crisis that their failed policies of open borders and amnesty have created. I understand the White House just announced that Vice President Harris will be visiting the border later this week. I hope that's true. The administration has made a lot of promises that they haven't kept. like not raising taxes, reopening schools quickly, being tough on Communist China, the list goes on and on. Trust me, I'm glad the Vice President seems to be taking my advice and finally listening to the American people. I truly hope that she gets down to the border to see the crisis firsthand that her administration and their failed policies have created. I hope she meets with the National Border Patrol Council, hear from them what our brave CBP agents are going through every day to keep us safe. I hope she meets with border community sheriffs who are responsible for keeping our families safe. I hope she meets with ICE and CBP section chiefs so she can hear firsthand the impact on them. I hope she takes an aerial tour like I did and sees the gaps in the wall. I hope she sees where the lights and cameras are sitting, powerless, without electricity, and unable to be used to monitor our border. I hope she meets with families who have been the victims of trafficking and hears the horrific stories they have, what they've been through because of this crisis. I hope she visits border communities that have been put in a position to house and care for the historic number of people illegally crossing our border. I hope she talks with families who have tragically lost loved ones from the massive amounts of fentanyl that the cartels are moving across our border. I hope she talks to the ranchers impacted by people illegally crossing their lands. More than anything, I hope this isn't a political stunt. If she truly goes to see this crisis, I'm going to lift all my holds of DHS political nominees. It's that simple. What's happening at the border is a crisis. There is simply no other word for it. It's been 3 months since I traveled to the southern border to see exactly how President Biden's open borders and amnesty policies are wreaking havoc. I remember my colleagues were saying, oh, we don't all need the wall. We can have lights and cameras so that they can monitor from someplace else. They're out there. They're just not hooked up to electricity intentionally. You can't make this stuff up. It's been 3 months since I made clear that President Biden and Vice President Harris need to get to the border and see the crisis that their administration has created. It's been 3 months since they pledged to visit the border. Since then, as you all know, you look at all the numbers, apprehensions at our southern border are at a record high. More than 180,000 illegal aliens tried to cross our southern border last month and were apprehended, the highest in 21 years. This is a crisis. It threatens our national security and the safety of American families. And we don't know how many people we didn't apprehend. President Biden's immigration policies are putting unaccompanied minors at risk of human trafficking, violence, sexual abuse, and separation from their families. They're leading to an alarming increase in human trafficking and drug smuggling by cartels. The FBI Director Wray said this month there is no question that cartel activity from Mexico is spilling over into the United States. We're seeing it here in Florida. I talked to sheriffs. What they're telling me is unbelievable amounts of fentanyl are coming across the border and getting into our state, putting Florida families in danger.